that under to your board, one page kind of thing. I guess, maybe.
Okay, so this, from the top, this is an introduction to UI in games. So I will be teaching you about the very basics and fundamentals of UI in video games. So what is UI, you might ask? UI is user interface in games, or user interface, not just in games, but it's present in many forms of digital media, including games. We're going to be focusing on games here today. Can you guys think of any UI that you guys like in a game?
Persona 5.
Okay.
Yes, yes. That's it, just Persona 5?
Sonic Mania.
The Sun Man is pretty good.
You have it up there already, Kingdom Hearts. I really like that one.
Yeah, Kingdom Hearts. If you guys were wondering what games I chose to put as UI on the screen, it's Kingdom Hearts, Sonic Heroes, and then Crash Team Racing. All of which I think are pretty good examples of UI. And I'll explain what makes a good UI in a second. Thank you. There are many forms of UI in games. It ranges from, all these constitute as different UIs in games. And I'll be telling you the different types on the next slide. But I would like to stay on the slide for a second. When I think of UI, I usually think of one particular type of UI, which is this one, but which we'll explain in a moment. But there's all types of UI, which is like this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. Yeah. Okay. So I was trying to, I kept saying I'll tell you guys what the type of UI I was talking about is. But here's the one I actually explained now. It's a heads-up display, or also known as the HUD. So if you ever have a developer asking you for a HUD, this is what they mean. The heads-up display is probably some of the most important UI in a game because you'll be seeing it constantly, and it usually conveys to the player what information they need to know at the moment. And it also can give like a feel of the type of game that you're making. It's supposed to tell the player information, so you can't get too crazy with the HUD, or it might be hard for the player to discern what they're supposed to be looking at, or like vital points of information. Like a good example of a pretty simplistic UI is Dark Souls has pretty simplistic UI. It just shows your health and stamina, and then these icons are meant to represent what buffs you currently have. If I were to improve on that, though, I'd make it more clear what the buffs mean, because the game actually doesn't tell you. You usually have to look it up. So that's yeah.
What's like the rest of the game? Like it's lore.
It's like figured out.
I think Metro Prime is a great example of a heads-up display because it's something that's diegetic, which means that it actually fits into the game's universe and themes. Because Samus is like the main character. She's a bounty hunter and she wears a power armor. So they made the heads-up display like the heads-up display on her armor, much like a computer has a heads-up display or a car. So they actually explain the reason why the heads-up display is there. This shows that you don't always have to have a heads-up display that is purely artistic or from a pure gameplay perspective.
Yeah, I think another example of that is Dead Space.
Yeah, Dead Space too.
All the UI elements there are in the world. When he opens up a menu, it's the character of the menu, and not just you see like the health on the back of the plate.
Also,
And sometimes,
you open up the menu.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
and one last example is a heads-up display of a fighting game. Because it's probably the most crucial heads-up display, because with a lot of other games, like theoretically with Dark Souls and like I've seen people do with Skyrim, you can mod out the heads-up display and still play the game relatively normal, even though you just die at random points. But there's usually other indications. In fighting games, there's pretty much no indication that your character is on low health, and since you're competing with someone, it's crucial the player knows everything about their opponent and them, so they can make the best decisions. Because if you don't have a health bar in a fighting game, you kind of just die randomly. Like, okay. Now, next slide. Thank you. Okay, a character select screen is also a type of UI. this is where you can, I call it a character select screen, but you can also, this also may be a place where you select a vehicle, like in the case of Mario Kart, or a weapon in the case of other games. But this is very important in multiplayer games because it's where you select the character or the player that you're playing as. But it's present in single player games as well, as in Sonic Mania, where you can choose the character before you start the game or start a level. This is a chance to be more artistic with the UI, because character select screen, as long as the person can hover over the character and tell which character they're choosing, usually you can kind of push more of the limits of UI design. Like this is Persona 4 Arena. This probably is the most functional UI could be for this type of game, but it's still easy to understand because each character is in a different tile from each other, and they put the player 1's character on top and player 2's character on the bottom. Marvel vs. Capcom, the original one, is the example of a pretty functional UI. It pretty much just has all the characters. They're bright, they're easy to see. They have pretty much equal space on the character select screen. And then Mario is an example of a game that doesn't have that has like character select screen that has a car, so something that's not a character where you can choose it. And then the last example is Super Smash Brothers, which Ultimate has like a lot of characters. But I think it's like a good example of a character select screen where you have a bunch of characters. Though if you're working on Game Sprite, I'm not sure if you'll have like a game with like 70 plus characters, but just for in general. Okay, the last one I will be talking about is the main menu and sub-menus. This is how you will traverse the game's options and other features and modes. This can be used in some games to check less urgent information, like a pause screen, where you'd find like items and weapons and stats for your characters. Some games, like platformers, put stuff like the amount of lives or the amount of pieces you need to like for like if it's like a collectathon game, which a collectathon game is like a game where you collect a bunch of things. But in RPGs, this is like the primary form of controlling the game. For example, like Final Fantasy, use a menu to pick spells and attacks. Same thing with Fire Emblem and Persona. Here's an example. This is Resident Evil 2. This is an example of it's showing you vital information about the character that you don't need to particularly know like immediately. Yeah, you can also choose items and stuff, as in like the case of Zelda. It's always just a pause menu. It lets you choose options when you move past the main menu. Yeah. Okay, so here's some examples of good UI in video games. First one is Persona 5, which is, I won't go too much into this because there's a video after this explaining why the UI is so good. But it's very stylish, it's easy to read. They do a lot of cool tricks with transitioning from a 3D model to a 2D sprite image, as you can see, like right there. Yeah, it's pretty cool, and and it has a cohesive color scheme and style. Like there's not a bunch of different fonts and everything, and it's not like I think everything meshes well together. Danganronpa is another good example of a game with a good UI. It has some. It's good for the same reason Persona is. It's stylish. It's easy to read. If I had to provide one complaint about the Danganronpa UI, is that if you play in a language that isn't native, the words they fly around stylishly, right? But if you're playing in Japanese and you're trying to read the subtitles, sometimes the words will come in upside down. So you just kind of have to either turn your head around or turn the screen around. It can be kind of annoying, but if you're playing in the language that you natively speak, then the UI is pretty good, and that's kind of what it was intended for. So, and Skullgirls is an example of a fighting game with good UI. It fits the aesthetic pretty well. It has like a 1930s aesthetic to it, and the UI reflects that, and it adds a lot of character to the game. Okay. And here's examples of some bad UI in game. Like so you have Mario Party 8. Like there's like my main problem with this is the character select screen. There's like a weird framing device behind it but the characters are above it, and it kind of feels like it's like off kilter because of that. Also, there's like 3 different fonts. Some of them have gradients, some of them don't. Yeah, it just doesn't fit too well together. This is what do they call it? Dissidia NT, which is like a Final Fantasy fighting game. This one has the problem that it's too busy. Like I said, if you have too much UI on in a game or too much on a heads-up display, sometimes it can distract the player from the game. Like here's the gameplay right here. There's characters who are literally being covered up by numbers, and like your enemies are right there, your party members are right there. It's like the entire screen is being taken up, and it's kind of hard to follow.
What would say the font choice for the UI is also very strange because every other letter is like shifting up, every other character should shift a bit. See that? So it's like wavy.
Yeah.
And that makes it
Yeah, it's really not great. And then it's Final Fantasy VI Mobile, which just it's pretty ugly, and it's mostly because it was made for a mobile phone, the UI. The problem is that this is actually the PC version of the game. They straight up ported the mobile version, and
There's another reason.
You will see that in like just about any single Square Enix port that they've made for anything. Like
Yeah.
the original one is fine, but if they port it to anything else, they always mess it up somehow. I don't know why Square Enix just does that.
I think it's easier for them to port it that way, but sometimes it does not. The game loses a lot of charm and identity that it once had from a UI that wasn't put as much care into. So you can see how the themes of the game can be not ruined, but diminished by UI that isn't great. Okay, and that was 2 great videos on UI. You can click on the first one, but you're gonna have to skip to 928. I tried to get the start at the
There's
beginning.
a function for that.
Yeah, I did that, but the Google presentation just ignores it when you put it in there.
That's why. Oh, on the back.
Full screen?
Let's just get right to it. Mario Party 8 is a total eyesore in its menu and UI design. It's functional, barely, but this presentation is just really poor. Here's a weird thing. The main menu is at a 16:9 aspect ratio, but the game itself is shown at a 4:3 ratio. It's jarring and unnecessary. The typography here is some of the worst I've ever seen. The type in the main menu items are off-center. The kerning, the spacing between individual letters, is uneven in spots. But the biggest issue here is the dump truck of different typographic styles in the menus. Most designers would recommend keeping your different font choices and styles down to about 2 or 3 at a time. The main menu alone has up to 5 different fonts and type treatments. Here, 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 and here. This isn't even the worst example of this in this game. Mario Party 8's typography inconsistently switches between using multiple outlines, drop shadows, and gradients for contrast. Like fonts, it's a good idea to use these effects sparingly on text, but instead, the game likes to use all 3 of these effects at once. Look at the text that appears at the start of someone's turn. The font here has 2 outlines, one of which has an ugly golden gradient, and there's also a drop shadow in between this line and the red fill. This is a typographic nightmare. There's no cohesiveness between modes either. The menus, board game screen, mini game screen, and the results screen all have something unique and terrible in their type. It's just all over the place. Good design.
Next one?
Yeah. 15.
Good design. It's tough. Persona 5's incredible UI is the inspiration for this series, so it deserves its own segment. Persona 5's UI is an excellent mix of style and functionality. It isn't necessarily a reinvention of anything. Instead, it's a stylish refinement of the same sort of menu systems used in other games. But the work done is so good. It elevates a very good JRPG into something astounding. When there are people cosplaying as your menus, you've done something right. P5's UI stands out partially because of how well it's tied to the game's major themes. Persona 5 is about thieves, willpower, and rebellion. It's full of visual motifs that match those themes. The ransom lettering used in the main menu headers, graffiti, CG animations of Joker swinging around between menus, and aggressive motion graphics with tons of thick and angular shapes. The menu layouts creatively break many conventional graphic design rules without being ugly or compromising functionality. Individual words and letters in the headers and subheaders of the type are cohesively and cohesive in design, with a varying baseline, type size, and deliberate misalignments. Breaking typographic rules like this can be really easy to mess up, but Masayoshi Suto, his team, and the localization team pull it off seamlessly. The combat UI is stylish too, and it makes the combat more engrossing. Every option in P5 can be reached by a single button, which lets battles flow smoothly, much better than most traditional JRPG menus where you're scrolling and picking everything. The countless motion graphic and character animations that play as you go through your options make selecting your next move feel more visceral and satisfying. The offset red silhouette that surrounds your characters is a brilliant way to highlight your character and connect it with the framing of the battle UI. Even if the novelty of these animations wears off, the spectacle doesn't get in the way to distract or slow down the action. P5's design is both high quality and high quantity. It goes above and beyond what it had to do. While not every game should be this upfront with its UI, Persona 5's graphic design is a selling point, and the game wouldn't be as memorable without it.
Okay.
Bad design.
Dude, I wish I could talk about Sonic Con. But that I'm pretty sure most of that game isn't finished, but I digress. The last thing, so to recap, we talked about the fundamentals of good and bad UI. Some of the good things about UI or some of the good things in UI are having something that's functional, easy to read for players, stylish and has its own identity, and something that you would want to look at if you were playing a game. Something that tells you all the information that you need to see. Bad UI can be something that's hard to read, something that that feels kind of generic and doesn't stand out from other UI, or UI that gets in the way of the functionality of the game. Next slide. So, as the last part of the workshop, I want to give you guys an assignment. It doesn't have to be great because your first time doing it, probably not, but I know some people can. but either way, I want you guys to try to make like a health bar from like a game of yours choosing like any type of theme, and try to use the principles of UI that you learned here today when making it. If you can't come up with a theme, you can use like a random theme generator. But yeah, that's it. Thank you.
All right, give it up for Johnny's first workshop. Good job. Got my notes here written on this plate. It looks pretty.